Welcome to Next on the Tee with Chris Mascaro, where tour players, legends, and the top instructors in the game share their stories, insights, and playing lessons. Join Chris every week as he talks with the greats of the game.
You are the smartest guy I've spoken to on radio or television in my career.
And Chris, again, you're knocking out of the park. You're like 8 under par in this interview.
If I ever have any research, I'm hiring your tail to be the research man. You're the best.
You're a fantastic host and tremendously respected in the golfing community.
Yeah, Chris, you do an amazing job, and your listeners are super lucky to have you, and it's always my pleasure.
Chris Mascaro is the king of the golf podcast. Don't miss him on Tuesdays.
Now, here's your host, Chris Mascaro.
Good evening, folks, and welcome in to one of my favorite episodes of the year of Next on the Tee. I'm your host, Chris Mascaro. It's my annual Happy Birthday to Me show. Yes, indeed. In a couple of days, I'll be celebrating the 24th anniversary of my 35th birthday. And people have been asking me if I'm upset about turning 59, and I say absolutely not. I did a lot of stupid stuff in my 20s, 30s, and 40s that I wish I hadn't done. But now I've got a wonderful family, great friends. I get to live out my dream doing this show every week. I've got great guests that I'm blessed to talk with all the time. I have all of you, the greatest supporters in the history of podcasts. I get to live out my dream of having this show in the sports section of my hometown newspaper, the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review. Iron City Beer is now one of the show's sponsors. Why would I want anything to be different? Now, I might wish for a healthier ankle and back, but at 59, that comes with the territory. So here we are, and every year at this time, I invite some of my all-time favorite guests to join me to get my birthday week started off on a very happy and positive note. And this year is no different. I have 4 very special people to me that I get to share with you tonight. In part 1 of the show, I'll get this celebration started off right with Olin Browne. He's going to be followed by John Patrick, then Hal Sutton, and we'll round it out with Frank Nobilo. O has been one of my favorite guests to spend time with since the very early days of this show. Tonight, I'm going to make it a baker's dozen times together for us. And the show this week is going to have 3 themes. 1, what my guests thought of this year's Masters. 2, what they thought about the performances they saw from Scottie, Ludvig Aberg, and Tiger. And 3, sharing their insights from having played at or covered the PGA Championship at the site of this year's tournament, which is Valhalla, and this year's U.S. Open, which is going to be played at Pinehurst number 2. Now, John Patrick is the host of the Augusta Golf Show. I call him the Godfather of golf radio because when I wanted to understand what an interview should sound like, some friends said, go listen to John Patrick on the Augusta Golf Show. And boy, were they right. Then I started having John as a guest on this show, and it took my education to a whole new level. He's been covering the Masters tournament for 40 years now. You're going to understand why he's the best who's ever done it. And by it, I mean golf radio, talk radio, and of course, knowledge of the Masters. He'll be along about 25 minutes from now. Hal Sutton and Frank Nobilo will join me in part 2 of this week's show. And if you're wondering why the show is carved up into 2 parts now, it was suggested to me that it might be easier to listen and digest the show in 1-hour increments instead of a 2-hour chunk. I hope the show fits into your commute, your workout session, or whenever you choose to listen, better now than it did before. But I welcome your feedback. Please feel free to let me know on social media. You can find me on Instagram and X at CTMascaro, or send me an email at chris@nextonthetee.net. But as always, thank you all so much for tuning in and taking the journey with me this week. Before we get this party started, as I've been saying to you guys all season long, our resident director of instruction, Tom Patry, and I have been working with a company called Kickpoint, and they have done some magical things with our logos and created some polo shirts with some wonderful designs where they take our logos and turn them into designs on a polo shirt. They're absolutely outstanding. Kickpoint Golf is a private label custom golf apparel company making bespoke polo shirts, quarter zips, and hoodies for those selected clubs looking to take their branded game to a whole new level. If you want to check out their apparel, and again, it's going to knock your socks off, send an email to info@kickpointgolf.com. They'll get right back to you. There's no middleman. They're going to go right to the guys that do this work. You're going to check it out, and you are really going to love what they do. I'm going to start showing the polo shirts that they designed for me on my Instagram, at CT Mascaro. Check them out there so you can get a sample of what they look like. These guys know where it's at. Now let's talk about golf getaways and buddies trip locations. When you're thinking about that, think about our friends over at the Macklemore, which is a wonderful resort located just south of Chattanooga, Tennessee, high atop Lookout Mountain. It is a casual 2-hour drive from Atlanta, Nashville, and Birmingham. The existing Highlands course is now ranked in the top 100 courses you can play in the U.S. by Golf Digest. The 18th hole is ranked in the top 10 finishing holes in the world. A second course, The Keep, is under construction and will open summer of 2024. The Keep is a Bill Bergen, Reese Jones design and features a 1.5 miles of dramatic cliff edge, with every inch of that edge filled up with a golf hole. A world-class hotel, Cloudland Lookout Mountain Curio Collection by Hilton, will open spring of 2024. Both have incredible views into historic Macklemore Cove, 1,200 feet below. You got to see it to believe it, folks. Stay, dine, and play golf above the clouds at Macklemore. Go online to macklemore.com to book your stay and play package. Now let's talk about the new P790 irons from TaylorMade. From the very beginning, P790 irons have been rooted in clean aesthetics and thoughtful design. However, their true beauty is found beneath the surface. With AI-optimized weighting and speed foam air on the inside, every iron is uniquely designed to perform exactly how you need it to. As striking as they are on the outside, their true beauty lies within. Learn more about the new P790 irons from TaylorMade by checking out their website at TaylorMadeGolf.com. Now leading off a very special Happy Birthday to Me edition of the show is the first of some of my all-time favorite guests, and the leadoff guy is Olin Browne. Let me remind you about Olin's background. He's from Washington, D.C., played his college golf out at Occidental College in L.A. He joined the golf team as a sophomore and gradually moved his way up to being their number one player. He was named a first-team All-Conference, All-SCIAC golfer in 1980 and 1982. He was inducted into their Golf Hall of Fame in 1997, and their Golf Annual MVP Award is now named in his honor. He turned pro in 1984. He won 4 times on what was then the Nike Tour, twice in 1991, once in 93, and again in 1996. He won 3 times out on the PGA Tour. He won twice so far out on the PGA Tour Champions. In 2005, he won the PGA Tour Comeback Player of the Year award. And over the course of his playing career, he's had 5 wins, 48 top 10s, and 110 top 25s. Included in those 5 wins are 2 so far out on the Champions Tour, including the 2011 U.S. Senior Open and the 2015 Mitsubishi Electric Classic here in Atlanta. He's a guy I'm rooting very hard for every week out there on the Champions Tour, and it's great to have him back with me again this week here on Next on the Tee. Hey-o, how are you, my friend?
You make it sound so good. I'm well. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you. So, I want to get your impressions. Obviously, we're on the heels here of another great Masters tournament. What'd you think about what you saw this year?
Well, Augusta showed its fangs on Thursday and Friday and gave the guys all they could handle. That course is on a nice edge anyway. And when the conditions present themselves, with 50-mile-an-hour winds, and the greens, everybody could see it on 18 when the green got sandblasted, right? The conditions were just brutal, and that immediately synthesizes the equation, and the very, very best players rise to the top.
And to that end, Scottie has now won 2 of the last 3 Masters. He's the first player to win back-to-back Players' Championships. Tiger only won that tournament twice. Jack has won the most Players' Championships, and that's with 3. And there's no reason to think Scottie won't three-peat next year. He's won 9 times now over the last 2+ seasons. He's starting to make me believe he's the next generational player that Tiger might be handing the baton to. Is he raising your eyebrows at all about that, O?
I think we have to be careful, because we're so eager to find the guy who's going to carry the banner for Tiger, right? For a while, it was Rory. He burst on the scene in 2011 at Augusta, really. but then backed it up with his U.S. Open win at Congressional. And then Jordan Spieth took the mantle. And it's so hard to sustain that level of play over the course of an entire career, or let's say a 15-year time, like Tiger did. From 96, basically, to, through his 2010 season, and then he won again, of course, when he came back after all his difficulties in 13, and then he won again at Augusta in 19. I mean, it's just he's an historical player, and he did it over the course of 15 or 20 years. It's hard not to be enthralled by what he's doing. It's one thing to win tournaments. It's another thing to win tournaments when the target's on your back, and he is proving to have that ability. And to back up his Players win with another one this year and become the first who's ever won that tournament in back-to-back years is extraordinary. That's historic. And then to put his second green jacket on Sunday night, that also puts him in elevated company. And let's just hope for all of our sakes that he could continue to play at this clip where he's in contention. The guy, if he does show up, and if he doesn't win, he finishes second or third. And I remember when Lee Trevino made a quote about Jack that was along those lines. So we're talking about a guy who's showing us a lot. And boy, I sure hope it continues.
Ludvig Aberg is another guy who might be putting everyone on notice. He didn't appear to me to be intimidated at all, not only during his first Masters, but also his first major. He looked like he was having fun out there, even after he made double on 11 on Sunday, smiling his way around the golf course. What were your impressions of him?
Well, what's not to like? The guy is the modern player, the epitome of it. Tall, strong, hits it beautifully, has an extraordinary golf swing, doesn't seem to have any weaknesses in his game, loves to play well. It's hard to play well all the time. But there were some other guys there, Max Homa, he played awfully well, caught a terrible break on 12. And he's been carrying a little bit of a burden of being a guy who, hasn't shown up in the biggest moments, and I think he rose to the occasion pretty well. I think he handled that beautifully. There are a number of guys, and I think this speaks to why it's so difficult to sustain great play over a long period, because there are so many high-quality golfers who are standing in line and itching to get. Look at Xander Schauffele. He plays great every week as well. It's just, we are really watching, look, Tiger dominated his era so much that guys who would be considered maybe top 2 or 3 or 4 players otherwise, had he not been there, get knocked down the ladder a bit, because he did so much winning over such an incredible stretch. And I just think, watching this Masters this last week, the cream rose to the top. The young players were eager and ready to play. They all showed up. They all played beautifully. They all managed really, really, really difficult conditions, certainly on Thursday and Friday. And then the course, those greens were firm. They were slick. The ball, if it wasn't struck exactly perfectly, didn't go where you wanted it to go. And, when you can't get purchased, if you don't roll the ball properly, you don't get purchased, and that ball starts having a mind of its own. So there was a lot of great golf over the weekend, and it was thoroughly enjoyable.
I believe you got to play in the Masters 3 times. What are some of your favorite memories from the times that you got to be a part of that tournament?
Well, the par 3 tournament is always a blast, right? And you get to, it's gotten to a whole new level with the kids caddying for their dads. But I had each of my kids was able to caddy for me in that tournament. And before it was broadcast, my caddy, Mike Harmon, managed to talk a TV crew into filming Bo Jr. Caddy for me when he was just a young lad, and we had a blast. And so I've got that tape, and I've got it forever, which is really great. But Augusta National is one of those, there are a handful of courses that you get the chance to play in your lifetime. That all you have to do is put one of those in quotation, and everybody knows what it means. It's one of those. But to be able to play Augusta National in the Masters elevates it to a place. It's the only major championship that's held at the same course every year. I think that pretty much everybody who plays it for the first time feels as though, he's played 100 or 200 rounds of golf out there, because the coverage is so awesome, and everybody knows what a putt does from what angle on which hole from having watched it over the years. So it's unique in that regard. And, you got the old course, which is the old course for a reason, and it's probably the greatest Open Championship venue. And you got Pebble, which is a great major championship venue. But we see them when we see them. We don't see them every single year. And Augusta National, we get to, and it's a treat.
Speaking of the first time, do you remember the first time you reached over and stuck a peg in the ground and tried to pull the driver back in a Masters?
Yeah, of course.
What's that like?
Mildly uncomfortable. I mean, you got a pretty good juices going, and it's what all of us aspire to is to be invited to those kinds of events. And one of the things that makes them so extraordinary is there aren't that many of them. The four majors, the Players has a lot of meaning now too. But really, the four majors are what it's all about in golf, and that's why Tiger set his sights on the majors. And we all lauded Bobby Jones for what he did back when the four majors, winning the Grand Slam, when the four majors were the two Opens and the two Amateurs. Those are how people's context and history are measured. And again, it's one of those. And I got to play three. It's about 43 too few, but I got to play three.
You mentioned Tiger, and let's talk about him for just a moment. We saw him withdraw from the Masters last year after the third round due to the weather conditions, all the rain and the cold. This year he got through all four rounds, struggled a bit on Saturday and Sunday. He said he wanted to play once a month last November at the Hero World Challenge, but he hasn't been able to do that after withdrawing from the Genesis back in January. Didn't play at all in February or March. Do you think we'll see him in a few weeks at the PGA Championship in Valhalla? Another very hilly golf course, and then at Pinehurst and Troon for the other two majors after that?
Tiger's building the blocks again. I thought he handled the worst of it the best. Thursday and Friday, when conditions were on the borderline, his short game was just extraordinary. And here's a guy who's playing with a compromised body. I mean, let's just put it that way. I mean, he's been through a lot recently, and I've obviously his being in the event is one thing, but his being on the broadcast, on the leaderboard, is something else. And he got to the weekend and he was only 8 shots back. Now, people have covered that ground in years past, and certainly in his prime, that was totally doable. But I really believe in watching him on the weekend that Thursday and Friday gassed him. I mean, it took a lot out of him, and you could see by Sunday that there wasn't much left in the tank. I mean, his preparation is legendary, and now in order to get his body ready, he really has to go through the ringer. And so I just think you could see that there was nothing left. There was no adrenaline. And I think if he could have gotten some momentum, something positive going, and gotten some adrenaline in his coursing through his veins, I think it would have carried him through all 4 days. But just to my eye, he just looked like he was tuckered out. And but it was encouraging to see him play all 4 rounds. And it was encouraging, in spite of the fact that he was gassed by the end of the weekend, to see him stable on his feet and able to finish the tournament.
Getting back to Valhalla, you played in the Senior PGA Championship there in 2011. You finished tied for 13th that week. Talk about your experience playing there and what it was like being in contention.
Well, it's a wonderful golf course. It has holes that bend multiple, both ways. It got right to left holes and left to right holes. It's got some challenging tee shots where absolutely, bombing it down the fairway is going to give players a huge advantage. Everything is dependent on the weather. Coming out of the spring in the deep south, and the course can be really wet because of spring rains, or it can be lush and green and ready to rock and roll. So whatever happens with the weather is going to really dictate what happens with the tournament. But there are pivotal holes on that golf course. And certainly coming down the stretch with 16, 17, and 18, you're going to see a lot of fireworks, and you're going to see some shots that put people behind the 8-ball. So, it's a Jack Nicklaus design. He's done some work on it over the years, hosted the 2008 Ryder Cup, Paul Azinger's victorious team, and there's a lot of good at that golf course. And people who win there they aren't accidental. They aren't accidental champions. It identifies the champ.
How does the topography there, because I read that it's a pretty hilly golf course, how does it compare to Augusta National?
Well, Augusta National is a funny course in that you come in at street level and you have no idea that you're at the top of the hill and everything's below. So you walk out the back of the clubhouse and virtually every single hole is down below you, whether you're going downhill or playing uphill. And then they crisscross along those slopes. Valhalla is more straightforward in that, there are some hills to navigate, but you're not walking across slopes, so you're not cockeyed. You may have to walk through a gully or, climb to an elevated tee or something like that, but it's an entirely different golf course too. It's spread out more. Augusta's really on the side of that hill, and it goes from the clubhouse all the way down to Rays Creek at the lowest point, and then comes back up to the clubhouse to finish. So there are a lot of holes that go a lot of different directions at Valhalla. There are par fives that are gettable. There are par fives if the wind's blowing in a certain direction that will present a real challenge. There are par fours that are borderline drivable. So, I think it's going to be a great test of golf, but it's for sure, another golf course that requires long, high, accurate shots. And, virtually every golf course that we described that has that kind of feature to it is going to benefit a guy like Scottie Scheffler. So, he's going to be, obviously he's going through a lot right now. He and his wife are about to have their first child, and, he'll come back, whether he can get himself amped up and ready to go. It sounds like he's got his ducks lined up and knows what he's doing, but it's a perfect golf course for him.
Oh, what many people may not know, speaking of the PGA and Augusta National, is the Senior PGA Championship goes all the way back to 1937. It didn't just come about in the 80s like the other four senior majors. And Augusta National actually hosted the first two Senior PGAs in 1937 and 1938. So this tournament has a rich history. Keith Jackson used to say about the Rose Bowl that it's the granddaddy of them all. Does the Senior PGA Championship feel that way to you guys?
Well, that's why I like coming on your show, because I learn stuff when I come on too. I had no idea about that, and certainly, look at major championships. As I said earlier, are major championships, and everybody wants to rise up and play their best in those events. And it's the longest standing major championship on our tour, and it's certainly one of the big ones. And it feels like it carries a lot of juice. So anybody who wins one has plenty to be proud about.
Oh, we hear so many players talk about you can't expect to compete, let alone win out on the PGA Tour or the Champions Tour without reps and tournament play. If you have all the shots sort of dialed in, whether it's at your home course or out on the practice range, why is it so different? What makes playing in a PGA Tour or a Champions Tour event so much harder than being able to compete locally or hit good shots out on a driving range?
Well, it's kind of it's a complicated answer to what should be a simple question, right? First of all, there's something to be said for familiarity, and everybody knows his home golf course, tee to green, every blade of grass. You know when you miss a certain shot into a green, when the flagstick is over on a certain area, that if you miss it short side, you're toast. Oftentimes you can miss a shot short side and actually be on an uphill lie and have an easier shot than if you play to the fat and miss wildly that way or whatever. But the truth is about championship golf is that courses are taken to the edge. Occasionally those edges get blurred, and we see things like what happened occasionally in, for example, at Shinnecock, when people are batting around balls because they're so frustrated with the conditions of the golf course. And I remember U.S. Open back, I think when Retief won it, that the seventh green, the wind was gusting and the balls were being repelled off the green because they were just too firm, too fast, and they had to put water on them to make that accommodation. So people don't they haven't seen extreme tournament conditions like the guys play on the tour, or certainly especially in major championships. And I think if they did, it would be a shock to the system. Not to mention, it's one thing to tap in a 3-footer at home on a Sunday. It's another thing to have a 3-footer where, if you make the putt, it's worth $4 million. Things change. The way your fingers work change, the way your blood runs through your body changes, the way your feet feel, your legs. It's an entirely different feeling, and that's why we all marvel at Steph Curry burying threes, or Caitlin Clark, the way she ran the tables in the women's NCAA, or Tiger Woods when he's coming down the stretch and making these incredible shots. I mean, Tom Brady winning his 7th Super Bowl in Tampa. Those kinds of things are unimaginably extraordinary, and we all kind of live vicariously through watching those.
This year, the U.S. Open is back at Pinehurst. You played in the Open when Pinehurst hosted it back in 1999 and again in 2005. You finished tied for 23rd in 05. You actually held a share of the lead after the first round with Retief Goosen and Jason Gore, and was still very much in the mix going into the final round, just 3 shots back. What do you remember about that week, plus playing Pinehurst in U.S. Open conditions?
I remember I got a lot of good bounces on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and all of a sudden the bounces went a little haywire on Sunday. And I'm the fool hugging Michael Campbell on the last green as he played just a wonderful round of golf. And he's been maligned, I think, over the years as, kind of a fluke champion and all that. I'll just tell you that I walked shot for shot with him, and he drove it beautifully. And when he got out of position, he got himself back into position beautifully. And the bunkers, they had filled the bunkers with sand that week, and there were 6 or 7 inches of sugar sand in each one of those traps. And it was almost impossible to get a good rake job. It was impossible to get a good lie. Clubs were digging, guys were every time he got in trouble, he hit it to 5 or 6 feet and then made the putt. And I'll just say without equivocation that he played an absolutely A-plus championship round of golf to hold off Tiger in that tournament. And it was an extraordinary experience to walk the fairway with him that day because of how impressively he handled the whole thing. And the truth is, by the time I got to 14 or 15, I was just trying to stay the hell out of the way because it was apparent to me that he was going to be the guy to finish the thing off, and he did. And it's with great admiration that I say I was there that day and got to watch it.
On the Champions Tour, we have the Mitsubishi Electric Classic coming up in about a week and a half. You won it in 2015. That week is some of my favorite days of the year because I get to see you and several of your peers who have come on the show. We're going to get to see you next week?
Looking forward to coming. Always love coming there. There's been some work done at Sugarloaf over the last few years. We're going to get back to the tournament course. The regular 2 9s. We played I forget what it's called, the other 9 holes, as they were repairing a couple of holes in the floodplain down on the front 9. But a really good design, and a very similar course in a lot of ways to Augusta National. Broad sweeping greens, lots of breaks, firm, fast, fairly ample fairways, elevation changes. It was a great course when it preceded the Masters, a great place to prepare. Phil Mickelson famously, loved playing there. And, I remember playing with him in 2006, was it, when he played 2 drivers and then went down and won Augusta that week, the week after. So he won back-to-back weeks. Really, really a good golf course, and certainly one I'm proud to have won.
The tradition is the first major out there on the Champions Tour. It's about 3 weeks away. You finished second there back in 2016. You're going to be in that field as well?
Well, I hope to. I'm starting to fade into the retirement category here. I'm going to be 65 this year, Chris. My skills aren't what they used to be. I sure love playing, and I sure love deluding myself that I can recover some of the good golf that I played, certainly in the first 10 years of the Champions Tour career. But I really think that Regents course is a wonderful golf course. It's a great test. The guys who win there certainly, got Bernhard Langer winning multiple times, Steve Stricker winning multiple times. It's a good test of golf, and they put on a great show there in Birmingham. We all love going there.
Oh, just a couple more before I let you go. And you've been on the microphone in the past doing some on-course commentating and analyst work. Might we see you do more of that in the future?
Well, I'd certainly be interested in doing that. I did it as a kind of like a part-time thing back while I was playing. I think, what's happened in golf has kind of affected all the tours in ways that maybe weren't anticipated. I don't think anybody has a very good understanding about the future of golf right now. I mean, I think we all love the game. We'd like to see it whole. We'd like to see it right. But it is fractured at the moment. We don't know what the future brings, whether there's going to be a resolution, if there's a resolution, whether it's going to take months, years, what. And so I don't think TV knows what is coming down the pike either. So there are a lot of question marks about golf, and I sure hope that we aren't killing the goose that laid the golden egg, because it really is a difficult thing to put extreme demands on our PGA Tour partners and the players and the fans. We need to find a way to reconcile all of these questions and get going in the right direction. I don't know what that is. I'm not privy to any of the conversations, any of the discussions, but I think everybody knows that things aren't quite right, and that we need to find a way to get to whatever that is and fix it.
Agreed. Oh, before I let you go, remind our listeners, how can they stay up to date with all the great things you're doing, whether it's following you online or it's on social media?
I do Twitter just to entertain myself while I'm sitting on the airplane at the airport waiting for flight. But come on out to one of our Champions Tour golfing events. We put on a great show. The Pro-Ams are a lot of fun. There are a lot of great players. It's the only sport that I can think of where Hall of Famers are currently active, playing at the highest level of the game. And so PGA Tour Champions is where it's at, Chris. You know it. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, I can't wait to see you next week. Thank you, my friend, for taking time out of your busy schedule to come back and be a part of the show. It's always a huge privilege to get to spend some time with you. I can't thank you enough for being here.
Great to be with you, bud.
Take care, I'll see you next week.
Okay, man. Be well.
That is one of my absolute favorite people on this planet, folks. Olin Browne, Browne is the spelling of his last name. Just one of the finest people you'll ever meet. I had the privilege of walking several holes with him out at TPC Sugarloaf during a practice round a couple of years ago. Best day of 2022 for me. I learned an awful lot. I enjoyed it a heck of a lot. And he just made me feel like I was a part of things. And that really made me feel special. So for a guy who won as often as he did, a major champion at the 2011 Senior U.S. Open, to make you feel like you're the most important part of the day is something very, very special about him. I can't thank him enough for being on this show. Like I said at the top, it is a baker's dozen times for Olin joining me. He has made each one of those times and made each one of those episodes of the show infinitely better by being a part of it. I can't thank him enough, and I am certainly looking forward to running into him out at TPC Sugarloaf next week. Coming up next, like I said at the top of the show, is the guy to me who is the best who's ever done it. And by it, I mean golf talk radio, news talk radio, and covering the Masters tournament, and that is John Patrick. Before I get to John, I was talking with Eddie Dry, VP of Domestic Sales for Strixon Cleveland Golf, at the PGA Merchandise Show earlier this year, and I said, Eddie, I like your CBX full-face wedges. How can they help an average player like me play better? Here's what he had to say.
An average player, I use one, and I'm in some lies that you can't even believe. And I need all the help I can get. And the face is bigger, and the grooves go all the way up and all the way out to the toe. So if you hit it on the toe, you miss it, bam, there's a groove. So I like that. So I carry a 58.
There you have it, folks. Try the new CBX full-face wedges from Cleveland Golf. I also want to give a shout-out to my friends over at On Point Golf and their great On Point ball marker. Get the #1 ball marker in the game of golf. On Point is the only three-dimensional ball marker out there, with alignment technology and a removable coin that is approved to use according to the rules of golf. As you know, putting is all about line and pace. Mark your ball with On Point, engage with your three-dimensional ball marker, and have more confidence in your line, execute the putt, and you're going to lower your scores. Do what the likes of Jim Furyk, PGA professionals, and amateurs alike are doing now. They use the #1 ball marker in golf and they lower their scores. You know Ken Duke and Thongchai JD. They won for the first time on the PGA Tour in 2023, and they were using an On Point ball marker. Get yours at onpointgolf.us and make more putts. And oh, by the way, you can also customize the removable coin for any club, event, or corporate outing. They make really great tee gifts and custom products. That's also going to help lower your score. I use On Point ball markers. Mine is black and gold, 3D black golf ball with a gold line down the middle to help me line up my putts. It's like having a 15th club in my bag. It's helped my game. Why wouldn't you let it help yours? Again, onpointgolf.us. See what I'm talking about. Order yours today. Now let's talk grips. I want to tell you about Lambkin grips. Every shot, as you know, has its own unique feel. The trick? Feel comfortable with each one. And comfort is built into the very DNA of Sonar Plus Black Grips. Composed of their Genesis material that provides supreme comfort and durability, with their fingerprint technology, creates a strong connection and unforgettable touch. The game changes from shot to shot. The feel in your hand shouldn't. Lambkin, feel is everything. Now back with me is the host of the Augusta Golf Show and Augusta's Morning News radio show on WGAC, and that is John Patrick. You can check out John's shows at AugustaGolfShow.com or stream his local news show at WGAC.com. There is no one that knows the Masters Tournament, the course, and its impact on golf history better than John does. Also, when it comes to the best golf radio show and host on the planet, we're all looking up at this man. To give you a sense of his place in the game, when COVID protocols reduced the number of people who got credentials for the press room at Augusta National, one radio show host, one, was there, and it was John Patrick. That's all you need to know about how great this man is. And I couldn't be more excited I get to have him back with me again this week here on Next on the Tee. Hey, John, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, Chris. How are you?
I'm fantastic, thank you.
Good. That lets me know it's working, that you responded. Here's the other thing.
Yes, sir.
I heard Olin mention his age of 65, so that sent me looking at the age of Hal Sutton and Frank Nobilo, your other guests, and I am apparently, and I understand birthdays are a theme, It makes me your oldest guest this evening.
Age means absolutely nothing. You are still the best in the business, my friend.
You know, Frank and I had a conversation last week. We're both very proud girl dads. And I saw that Frank's daughter, who has been in broadcasting with CNN International, was leaving. And I watched the video of her saying goodbye, and I posted something on X, and I had posted something a few days earlier about my daughter, who is a pulmonologist. And Frank was very kind to post back up there that, you know, we're both very proud of our daughters, and we had a long conversation last week about our daughters.
I'm a 2-time girl dad myself, so I understand about being proud of your daughters.
Yep, there you go.
John,
all right, well, that was great, Chris. Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Glad we got that cleared up. I believe this is your 40th Masters this year, John, and I know you've seen tremendous growth and upgrades on the property since you first started going out there. I'm curious to get your thoughts about what the property was like when you first started covering the tournament to what you've seen it evolve to now.
You know, and I don't mean this to sound disparaging, but we had a conversation Sunday about that sort of topic. Sunday, the drive, chip, and putt day, and over the weekend with the women, and it was with a person who'd been covering it a very long time, and they said, you know, when we first got here, this place was well done and charming, and now it's well done. You know, some of the charm has left because it's just gotten so darn big. When I first started covering it, you know, we parked in a lot that was crush and run, and the gates were temporary. We're far from that now. It is a well-run machine that rivals anything sport has to offer, whether it's baseball, football, tennis, basketball, other golf venues. There's nothing like it. One of the great joys in my life is spending time with first timers as they get their first look at just everything, whether it's the merchandise shop and the gnomes, whether it's the golf course, whether it's Amen Corner, whether it's just the hilliness of the course. I mean, it is different. It is different. It's not bad, but it is very different than it was 40 years ago.
And Augusta National has bought up a ton of property in and around the golf course. There have been rumors about potentially a second golf course coming down the road. Can you see them adding a second course? And if so, do you think it's there to host all 3 rounds of the Augusta National Women's Amateur? Just another place for the members to play? What are your thoughts about where the course is headed 5-10 years down the road?
I'll give you that answer if you promise to destroy this tape at some point. I don't see them adding another golf course. I don't see them wanting that. It just doesn't factor into what I see for their future. Even the land. I mean, the way they've got parking situated now and some of the off-campus venues that they have, another golf course would be pretty far away from the original golf course. I guess theoretically, you know, you never say never. And I guess the golf course, you know, I guess a good parking lot could separate 2 golf courses, and the women could play over there and come over on Saturday and play the big course. But my visceral reaction to that rumor is I don't see that happening. I don't know how long it's been since you've been here, but one of the things they will not deny is an off-ramp off of I-20 that will lead right down into the property. And I think that's more on their drawing board than another golf course. But again, if you agree to destroy this audio when they do build that other golf course, I don't feel that they would.
I always find it interesting because there's one family who won't sell their house to Augusta National, despite being offered 7 figures for a house that's probably worth 10% of what's being offered to them. What's the word around town for why they're holding out?
Well, the word is that the deal is struck, and it just, once that house becomes available, it will that land will become property of the National. The deal is struck, but the deal, and they do this a lot in the community. They have struck deals with shopping centers and parcels of land that they don't, as of April 16th, 2024, need. So when it comes to a need, then things will happen. They purchased the the shopping center across the street from the club that holds a fresh market and a few other stores. And now in the last 9 months, they created Map and Flag. So they own a lot of property that they are currently not needing, but when they do need it, they will avail themselves of it.
John, getting into the actual tournament this year, the winds were incredible on Friday and Saturday. Have you ever seen conditions like that before?
No, not with those sorts of winds. We've had cold weather, we've had breezy weather, we've had breezy cold weather, but not the visuals of the sand being buffeted around the 18th green. We hadn't seen anything like that. I took umbrage with some of the players who were complaining about it. Everybody had to play that golf course, and golf is an outdoor sport. It was not thunder, it was not lightning, it was not dangerous. So, put your ball on the peg and let's go. Everybody's got to play in it.
I love it. How close do you think they were to halting play because the winds were getting close to making the balls move around out there on the greens?
I don't think they were that close. I really don't. I think they, they were monitoring the situation. The rules being what the rules are, balls can oscillate. I don't think we were very close to calling play.
We all saw Tiger set the record for most consecutive cuts made this year. He played really well for most of 2 rounds. It looked like the 23 holes he had to play on Saturday and then the quick turnaround he had in between rounds was kind of tough on him. Ended up shooting, as we saw, 82 on Saturday and 77 on Sunday. What are your thoughts about his ability to deal with the terrain over there for 4 rounds and ultimately potentially compete for another green jacket?
Yeah, I don't see that. I don't think he can deal with the golf course anymore from a physical aspect. I was mesmerized by, on that day that you mentioned, with all of the wind and all of the discomfort, the 48-year-old guy showed him how you do it. You just go out there, you shoot even par, you make the cut, you grind it out. Nobody grinds better than he does. And I thought that was really, really a neat moment. But to your point, it probably took an awful lot out of him, as was witnessed by his scores in the final 2 rounds. There is, what will Tiger do? I wouldn't be surprised if he skips Valhalla. I really wouldn't. I think he'll go to Pinehurst. We all thought he'd play in the Players, and he did not, when he kind of said he was going to try to do 1 a month. That may be asking a bit too much. We were speculating on the morning show in the last couple of days, had we seen the last of him? And I don't think we've seen the last of him. I do think, and I don't think it'll be a farewell tour, but I do think, and it's not something he does often, there may come a time in the near future, very near future, that he announces what he plans on doing. And I would not be surprised again if he says, the upcoming Masters, is it 25, is it 26? The upcoming Masters will be my last major. I just get a sense he'll end it here. Maybe because he's got 5 of them. I just get a sense that when he's going to be finished, I don't think he just goes away. I don't think he plays in a golf tournament and we never hear from him again. I don't think he wants a farewell tour, but I think he wants to say bye to this place when that time comes.
Last year, when you interviewed Jim Nantz, he thought that was going to be Rory's best chance to win the Masters and complete the career Grand Slam. Last week, I interviewed Gary Player, and he thought, no, this is the year that Rory gets it done. Obviously, that didn't happen. We keep waiting for him to not only win this tournament, but also another major, since it's been 10 years since the last one. Do you think it's just a matter of time before Rory gets it done at Augusta National, or is this tournament too much in his head because all it's going to mean for him?
I know Tiger thinks he'll win it. I heard something the week before the Masters that I had not heard someone say, and I thought, God, that makes a lot of sense. And that someone said, I think before Rory wins at Augusta, he needs to win a major somewhere else. That's the real monkey on his back. 10 years without a major. Yes, he's got the career Grand Slam sitting there. But I don't think he wins this tournament if he doesn't win another major. Time is not on his side. He has so many issues here, and sometimes in his game, most of the time in his head. He's getting nothing but older. It did make sense to me though when that person said, "Wins another major, I give him a better shot at Augusta," and I would agree with that.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. What about on the opposite side of that coin? Now Scottie Scheffler has 2 green jackets in the last 3 years. Last month, he became the only player to ever win back-to-back Players' Championships. Are we witnessing the guy who may be taking the baton from Tiger and becoming the next dominant player?
Well, yeah, I think we have to be careful with dominance. We saw so much dominance from Tiger on a level at which we'd not seen before, and I don't think we'll see again. I pay close attention to what some of these guys say. 2 things always cross my mind. When you run into a golfer who says he's close, how's your game? It's close. He's not lying. When you run into golfers who talk about the other golfers, pay attention to who they're talking about, and they all talk about Scottie's game. Yeah, I would not be surprised, and a curse. I would not be surprised to see Scottie win 4 of these things. Can he win more? I don't know. We'll see how everything plays out. But he's just so dominantly good on this golf course, especially. It doesn't seem to faze him. Now, he talked about the fact that it was a grind, but he seems to deal with the grind better than anybody else. It would not surprise me at all to see Scottie win 4 of these.
Speaking of somebody that this tournament didn't seem to phase, Ludvig Aberg is a guy to me who looks like he might have the it factor. He's got the game, he's got the demeanor, and the looks in his eyes says to me that he's going to win a lot out on the PGA Tour. What you think about what you saw from him?
Well, we fought his name all weekend. I thought he was Aberg, and all of a sudden CBS called him Aberg. I mean, he laughed his way through the weekend. He smiled his way through the weekend. He seems to have the attitude of, man, I'm playing a game for a living and they're paying me a lot of money. This is not bad at all. That was his very first major, obviously his first Masters. I'll be curious to see when success comes his way. I know he's won on the DP World Tour, and he's got a Ryder Cup under his belt. But when he wins a couple of times, when all of a sudden he's really in the discussion before a major championship, and I guess he will be before the PGA. Let's see how he does with that. I don't expect him to do poorly. That takes it up to another level. He's kind of sorta, especially for the non-golf fan, under the radar. When he gets on the radar, I'll be curious to see how he responds. But with what we've seen so far, he's very, very impressive.
Getting back to the golf course, Chairman Ridley was asked during his press conference last week about the lengthening of the golf course, and he said he's holding to the red line of 8,000 yards for the course, and he hopes that they never get there. They seem to tinker with the course every year. Can you envision them adding even more length, and if so, where would they do it?
I don't know where they do it. They do have a little bit of room, but boy, it seems like everything is maxed out. I've never really liked what they've done with the 7th hole. In the old days, the 7th hole was sort of a respite, was sort of maybe an iron, maybe a fairway wood, and a wedge. And that green seems fit for a wedge. It doesn't seem fit for a 6-iron. So I'm not a huge fan of the 7th hole with what they've done on the 7th hole. The 11th is a brute. He will not mess, and he said he will not do anything with the 12th hole under his watch. I just don't know where they can do any more. And 75, 55 or whatever it is right now seems to be long enough. And honestly, I don't know if at any point this weekend they played it at that length. I do know they know that a professional golfer gets uncomfortable at 240 yards. And that's what the 4th hole is when it plays all the way back. But they can always. I'm just trying to physically think of the the layout of the club, and there's not a whole lot of space. I guess they could move 5 back, but geez,
Right?
I guess 8 could probably go back a little bit. 9 could maybe a little bit. 10 a little bit, but I don't know if they want to make 11 longer. They've made 13 longer. They don't really have room for 15 and 17. They got a little room, but not much.
Switching gears just a little bit, John, the golf television ratings have been way down this year, down 35% at the Waste Management, down 30% at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Sportico is reporting that the final round of the Masters was down 20%. Not clear if they're taking into account any of the streaming numbers. But from what I'm hearing, people are kind of pointing to being concerned about where the PGA Tour and the PIF are headed. And that's hanging over the game. Plus the fact that we're probably losing a portion of the casual fans that used to tune in to watch Tiger, and he plays so rarely anymore that those folks may not be tuning in. How concerned should Jay Monahan and the people at the PGA Tour board be about what we're seeing with the ratings?
Well, I think they're concerned. I think the club is concerned. The National is concerned. They want good ratings. But I think it has more to do with the overall landscape of the demographic and the viewer. I don't think it has a lot to do. Certainly can't have a lot to do with the competition. Although I think you're fooling yourself. Without Jon Rahm, without Dustin, without Brooks, television struggles. They do a great job with it, but television struggles to build a story out of a Jake Knapp or something like that. They are great stories, but when the casual golfer fires it up on a Saturday afternoon and looks at that leaderboard and doesn't see a name he recognizes, I think that's a big problem for them. But I think the bigger problem is the demographic, the younger, the 25 to 44-year-old who's finding so many other things to do. Golf's ratings are not theirs alone. Unless you're the NFL, everybody's suffering a little bit.
John, just a couple more before I let you go. And speaking of Live Golf and the PGA Tour, how do you think this whole thing plays out? And do you think we get a resolution anytime soon?
Well, I don't know what anytime soon is, but I think we get a resolution. I don't think you can keep going without Jon Rahm playing in events, without DJ, without Koepka, and without some of the other players. It's not the best. There aren't other sports that do this. We haven't had something like this since AFL, NFL, ABA, NBA. They have to come to some resolution. And I think Tiger alluded to the fact that the conversations were going well. It's just complicated. It's difficult. It will require some regulatory issues. But I think they've got to get those guys back on tour. They've got to get, even Harold Varner, any of them. They've got to get them back on tour. You got to get the best players playing and getting together more often than 4 times a year.
Rory has talked about his vision of a Premier League sort of setup where you've got the best of the best playing at one level. Guys either get promoted or relegated down. Do you see this getting, a year from now, 5 years from now, where we've got what Greg Norman used to envision as a world tour where the best of the best are out there playing, maybe a half a dozen times here, half a dozen times over in Europe, a half a dozen times over in Asia and Australia, and guys getting relegated up and down? Do you see something like that in an evolution of professional golf, or do you think we all just come back together and it's same old, same old?
Yeah, I think we come back together and it's the same old, same old. I think what I envision, and 5 years down the road is a long time, I envision should the PGA Tour and the Saudis come to some sort of an agreement, I envision it looking a lot like it did. I envision the signature events kind of going away and tour and purses being elevated just in general. I think they've had a hard time with some sponsors. They've had a hard time with some communities. So I what the fall looks like could be kind of fun and different. But I think if they come together, my guess is the PGA Tour will resemble what it used to look like, and just a bit of a refined product.
Is Jay Monahan the commissioner?
I'm surprised he still is. With Rory coming out saying that he's not going anywhere, if Rory had gone, and I don't know how much the speculation. Well, I mean, I think Rory has said he has never been approached, nor would he listen to anything. We kept hearing one of the things they were saying to him was, probably what they said to Jon Rahm: if you come, we have to merge. I'm surprised he still is. I think that I don't know who a successor would be. So that may be saving his job right now. As far as who would step in for Jay, and it's crossed my mind that if there is this long-term merger and that they form this for-profit company and Jay is the CEO of that, does the tour need a commissioner? If that organization is going to run the PGA Tour and other things, maybe the idea of a commissioner just for that tour goes by the wayside. I wouldn't. I don't know about his tenure. I'm surprised he's still there.
John, before I let you go, let our listeners know, how can they stay up to date with all the great things you're out there doing and following you online and listening to your shows as well?
Well, as you mentioned, there's the website for the golf show, AugustaGolfShow.com. You can listen on the iHeartRadio app, on Odyssey, on your streaming systems at home. The daily news talk show is at WGAC.com, or an app for that. It's just, we're just working, Chris. It's time to do another show somewhere.
No doubt it is. John, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your busy schedule to come back and be a part of the show. It's always a huge thrill to spend some time with you.
I see Hal's ready to go, but he can hang on. Is today actually your birthday?
Friday is actually my birthday.
Friday is actually your birthday. And you will be how old?
I will be 59.
Again, I'm still the oldest guy on the show. Happy birthday, Chris. And I know I say this when I'm on, and I know it gets said on social media, but there is nobody in this game and doing what we do nicer and better than you. You're incredible, man.
Well, that certainly means a lot to me. That's a huge compliment coming from you, the guy who I consider to be the best who has ever done this. I will absolutely cherish that forever. Thank you so much for saying that. And I hope I get the privilege of catching up with you again real soon, John.
Yeah, we need to find a way to actually meet each other.
Indeed, we do. I'd love to come over to Augusta sometime and buy you lunch, or at least get to say hello to you.
I think if you come over, I owe you lunch. So.
We'll argue that at the time.
All right.
Take care, John. All the best to you and your family. We'll catch up soon.
Thanks, Chris.
See you, John. That is the great John Patrick, folks. Do you see now why I say he's the best who has ever done this? He is just a wonderful individual. He is incredibly talented, incredibly knowledgeable, incredibly articulate, and the things that he brings to his shows and to this one when he is joined have been off the charts great. Look, you got to go out there and listen. If there's anybody out there who hasn't listened to the Augusta Golf Show, and I can't imagine that there are, but just in case there are one or two people that haven't listened to it, AugustaGolfShow.com is where you can find John's work. And as I've said at the beginning of this show, and I haven't actually said this to John in the past, but he has been a mentor to me. Just listening to the way he does things, going out and listening to his show, taught me an awful lot about what an interview is supposed to sound like, what a show is supposed to sound like. I learned from him from listening to his show, plus paying attention when he is on my show. Look, I mean, listen to the way that he delivers an answer, the way he delivers a question on his show, and the way that he interacts with his guests are a masterclass in what a golf show or a talk show should sound like. I can't thank him enough for all he has meant to me over the years, and I can't wait to the next time I get to have him as part of this show, and hopefully I get to go over to Augusta and have lunch with him very, very soon. All right, my friends, that's going to wrap up part one of this week's show. My sincere thanks to Olin Browne and John Patrick for coming on and sharing their stories and insights with us. Coming up in part two of this week's show, I'm going to be joined by Hal Sutton and Frank Nobilo. We'll continue the themes of talking about the Masters, the upcoming PGA Championship at Valhalla, and look ahead to Pinehurst in the U.S. Open. This has been a wonderful first part of this week's show. I can't wait to get into part 2. Stay tuned. It'll drop for you in the next couple of days. Until then, hit 'em straight, my friends.